Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Um, we have a very special guest today. I think can you folks at the back hear us? Is that okay? Okay. At any point, if you don't, please let us know. We'll increase the volume. We have a very special guest with us today. For those of you who are from this region, I don't think there's a single person here who has not heard about Robosoft. Robosoft has been and is the pride of this region. Started in the mid-90s, was acquired by TechnoPro of Japan for about $100 million a few years ago. And we have with us today the person who was instrumental in growing Robosoft to where it has been today. So, welcome Shylaja.
Thank you.
Well, last week when we celebrated Women's Day here, and a thank you week, and Chandrani was asking me, who can we have to invite somebody to talk, and it has to be a woman this time. So we said, I said the only person I can think about on top of my head is Shylaja. Very inspiring story, a lot of achievements, and we hope to hear your story today.
Thank you so much. First of all, calling me here over, and I must say you have a beautiful office.
Thank you.
I always love coming back here. It's been a few times that I've come. I was just joking to Prashanth, now I can show this office to others. I know it that well.
Yeah, we keep meeting in events here and there. We never get a time to sit down and actually chat. So what better than chatting in front of all of these people who will also get to hear as well. Probably we can start with your family background, where you grew up, what it was like growing up, and how did you end up in Robosoft?
So I belong to this region. So my dad is, from Puttur, Sule, if you've heard of that place. Mom is from Udupi region, Mangaluru. That's, my roots here. So all along I've been belonging to this place, but never lived here. All my childhood I was born and brought up outside the region, primarily because my dad was a banker, and it was a transferable job. So obviously we have, I think, lived across India, including Calcutta, Hyderabad, but large part of my childhood was spent in Shenoy. That's where I did most of my education. My entire schooling was done there. And then we had some family issues in terms of my grandparents not being too well. So we came back, and I ended up studying in Mangaluru. So I was a student of St. Agnes College. That's where I did my 10th. And that was a very crucial time, as you would all know, board exams, 10th. And for me, it was a state change. So I had to transfer myself from Tamil Nadu to here. I knew Kannada, but not that great. So I was, quite skeptical about my Kannada scores back then in 10th, but managed to get a decent score. So that was, a transitionary period for me. Then I continued my PU also there, and then I chose to do engineering. So we are three siblings, with three of us. So I'm the youngest. So my elder brother is an engineer. He's a B computer science, in electronics and communication. So I kind of followed his footsteps in a way, but chose to do computer science engineering from NITE. And that's how I finished my engineering, and then Robosoft.
And which year did you pass out from NITE?
So 98 was the year I passed out from my engineering. That was way back late 90s. Yeah. And Robosoft was actually started in 96. So to just set the context of a little bit of background about Robosoft. So Robosoft is a company which is a services company, and this was started in 96 by Rohit Bhatt. And the first 2 years were in Bombay. The first 2 years we started this journey in Bombay, and the trigger to start that company was his journey in Japan. So he used to work for a company. Due to work there, he was deputed to Japan, and you know how Japanese culture is, right? Very inspiring. They are so particular about processes, so particular about discipline, culture. I mean, it's a different world altogether. So having seen that country, you know, rebuild themselves after the World War, you know, the entire country was destroyed and they were rebuilding themselves, and you know, that was an inspiration. And so he came back to Bombay, started the company, and by choice or what destiny, I don't know, but we ended up having our niche in Macintosh platform back then. It was unheard of in India for sure. So we were the only development company in India which was working on the Mac platform. So he started his journey in Bombay, but quickly he realized that Bombay was very, very difficult to survive. You're a very small entity, big city, you know, it becomes very, very difficult to grow. So he decided to come back. So he belongs to Udupi, he came back here. But again, here it wasn't that easy, I would say, because back in those years, you know, the infra was not that developed, you know, in our region. But possibly we were slightly luckier. We found our incubation space in NITK near Surathkal. So back then it was called as KREC. So he opened up an office there, and he happens to be a student of Nitya, so he came for campus recruitment. But luck had its own way. I had my exams on that day, so I didn't get a chance to attend campus interviews. So, you know, I lost that opportunity. Two of my friends got placed there, and the other guys who could not attend, we were all disappointed because back then campus interviews were also a rarity. We hardly had maybe TCS and Infosys coming to your campuses, and maybe 5 people lucky enough would get placed, but beyond that, nothing else. So that was what it was, and I applied at Robosoft later, a month later, because I heard that there are openings still there, and I applied, and I was very, very casual. And back now, when I reflect back, I just, you know, think how immature I was. So very, very casual about, you know, applying and then getting a job there. So I had an interview on August 11th, and I got my offer immediately. And August 13th, 1998 is when I joined, you know, Robosoft. That was in the NITK Incubation Center. That's how my journey started.
Funnily, even I'm from Nitya, so a lot of detail in this. Yeah. So you've had a long stint in Robosoft, right? And you joined there from campus, right out of college. So tell me kind of the different roles you played. Like, how did you end up being the chief operating officer of Robosoft? And that journey would be pretty interesting for us to hear.
Right. See, I think when you're a very small company, there are no boundaries made, and I think it's a good thing in a way because you get a chance to dabble with multiple things. But honestly, when I joined as a developer because I was a computer science engineer. I joined as a developer, did that for a while, but quickly I realized that's not my cup of tea. And I was honest enough, and I think I've always believed in being very honest, transparent with whatever you go through, because I think that gives you clarity and helps the other person also, you know, to work with you more easily. So I was very honest. I went back and I said, Rohit, this is not something that I enjoy. Maybe I should do something different. So I got into QA. Interestingly, I found it very interesting. And I used to love the fights that I would have with the development team. And they were my classmates and my friends. And I would feel very happy when I found bugs because they were the geeky guys, So I used to enjoy that bit, and I did that for a while. But at the same time, what also happened is as a company, we were adding numbers. So, we became 20 and then 30 and then 50. So the numbers started growing. And obviously, you needed somebody to step in there to kind of help because Rohit was busy. We never had a sales team for a very long time. I'll speak about that a little later. So he needed somebody to kind of pitch in. So while I used to continue all this development QA role, I also parallelly started helping on all these activities and built a team around it. So there was no mentorship typical. We were just working along the way, learning and getting help from various friends and mentors that you find in your network, and just started that journey. And of course, over a period of time, we built processes and things like that. But yeah, that just happened. And without having a background, I've done multiple kinds of things. Now again, when I reflect back, I was like, I don't know whether you're familiar with this STPI certification.
Yeah.
So Software Technology Parks of India, way back in 2000 this was started. None of us had any clue how to go about it. All we knew is we had to apply. There was a huge 100-200 pages of application that you have to submit, and you had the perks of income tax, exemption and things like that. So 2 years of experience person, I go to Bangalore, sit in STPI offices and working with the STPI officials to get the certification, and we did get it also. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you want to make things happen, you'll figure out ways to do it. You just have to jump in and get along the way. But yeah, that was the interesting part.
Yeah, and you said when you grew from 20 to 30, like by the time Robosoft was acquired, how many employees were in Robosoft?
So we were about 1,200 at that point
Wow.
of time.
Yeah.
And largely we were a services company. And
Right.
this I'm only talking about Robosoft. We also had other sub-entities. So we had 99 Games and Global
Right.
Elect, which was a separate headcount.
Right.
So put together we were almost 1,600 odd people, because each one was 150 approximately at that point of time.
Right.
But just Robosoft was about this.
So that's pretty interesting, because probably Robosoft is the only company from this region with most of the engineering sort of employees being there, which grew to that number, right? So can you tell me, how did that happen? I mean, from hiring to when you get growth, you have to support it. I'm pretty sure you had so many challenges that you faced all across. Please, you can walk us through that.
So first of all, I think what works for every company is to figure out what is your strength. And we always believed that our strength was technology, and keeping a vision of what next is going to happen. I think that's more important, because see, technology keeps changing every day. You have no control over that. Today, what is the hype? Today we all talk about AI and ChatGPT. Tomorrow something else will come. But having the vision as to what next is there coming up, I think is a very important step, and we have always done a decent job at it, is how I would look at it. So that's the first step that we did as an organization. So for example, we went through a lot of these .com bursts that happened. So 2000, that time frame was a very bad year for most of the IT companies. And when we were trying to hire also, we used to get this taboo, oh, IT company, we don't want to hire, we don't want to join because we don't know what is going to happen. But I think we sailed through, and what helped at that point of time is we always kept ahead of what next technology is going to come, right? And thinking far ahead always was helpful. It was not a rosy picture, but definitely came with its own challenges. For example, at a point in time where we knew that we were the only Mac developer, we would do the right networking at that point of time. So for example, we were closely collaborating with Apple, and we got listed on Apple's website. So they used to refer to all their partners that if you have any work on Mac, please go and talk to Robosoft. They are our best development partner. And back in the early 2005 to 6 time frame, Apple did this, and we were the only Indian company who was listed on their website. And I think globally they had only listed about 6 or 7 partners of this kind. So that was a big help, because whoever wants to work on the Mac platform, get their application developed on the Mac platform, would typically go there and check on their website as to who are their development partners, and that kind of helped us. So it was largely word of mouth that kind of helped back then. And so that definitely was a good thing. So whoever would join Robosoft knew that they would get cutting edge work to do. So while I talk a lot about Mac, we also quickly realized that having an over dependency on one platform is a not great thing. So we quickly diversified ourselves into other platforms also. And many of our customers also would come and ask, so we did have our Windows team developed and ready by then. We also had a lot of web platform technologies team lined up. So we tried to keep ourselves aligned. So that was a major help that we had as an organization, that we could always speak about cutting edge work being there available for people, and that kind of excited. It was not typically money, because money, I think, is a very short-term incentive for people. In the long term, what people enjoy as engineers is the kind of work that you get a chance to do, and I think that we were able to give to our people.
Yeah, I still remember. I graduated from NITE in 2005, and Robosoft had set up labs in
Yes.
NITE
Yes.
for people to work on Macs.
Right.
Because firstly, people got and it was a privileged lab. Like if you got into that lab, you could work, you could actually sit on a Mac and work. Right? Yeah, I mean, growing to a number like that, of course, one is on the business side, figuring out how to drive sales and business. On the other side is the actual resource, right? And some of the challenges we have faced is in this region, like you get great people coming out of college, but getting senior folks was a huge problem. I mean, at least until COVID. And the time that you grew was probably between early 2000 to 2010, 2015. Tell me, what was that like, and how did you overcome that problem?
Right. So just to go a little bit into history, so when we were in NITK campus, in the incubation center, the way we could, keep our people happy was the beaches that were just close by to our offices. So that was a perk. Back then, you didn't have your generator backups, and all that was, unheard of. So you have a downtime, and typically that used to happen, right? Back then you don't have power backups and things like that. So that was a different world altogether. But what we realized is, as we grew, you cannot just depend only on freshers, hiring. So when we all joined, we were all freshers. But after a point in time, you can't just do that. You need people to lead the team also parallelly. So initial years were definitely difficult, Prashanth. I would not want to say it was all easy because you're a small company in a small town. So why would anybody want to come and settle down here and join your organization? But what also helped parallelly, and by God's grace, I would say that's how I would look at it. Manipal happened, okay, and we were in Udupi, so Manipal as a town really grew at that stage. So you had these international students coming in, so the ecosystem in Manipal, grew. So that kind of brought in a lot of different kind of people to the town. And aspirationally, as people who come to a small town, their problem will be, I don't have a nightlife, I don't have restaurants, typical all aspirational, things. But since Manipal happened, that kind of helped us because we could always position that you're not missing out on anything by coming to Udupi. You still have all these, aspects. And if you're a person who loves green, who loves beaches, you have that as well. So we could position that way. In fact, on our website, we had put up a big brochure saying how do you live, work, play, so we would help people with details about when you're shifting here to this region, what kind of schooling is an option for your kids, what kind of healthcare facilities are available, because our region is known for education, is known for healthcare. But what an outsider would not know about this was helpful through this brochure to kind of know. So those kind of things we did, and also we always joke about our building. I don't know if you're familiar or not, but we had built a huge building on the highway, and that was a big debate that we had. So again, we had multiple offices, 50 people in different locations, and we realized this is not scalable and it's not practically possible because we had to run around all offices. So we decided we had to be centrally located, and one of the main reasons we did that was people used to run to Bangalore saying there are fancy buildings over there, there's nothing over here. So we said, okay, we'll build a building also for you now. So, but jokes apart, that was one of the main intents. That we thought, let's create something which people will feel proud of, and let that not be a reason for people to, kind of think about going out of the region. Let's create some structure which people feel proud about. Okay, so the glass building that you see today is one of the kinds in Bangalore. I am sure there are hundreds of them, thousands of them. But in our region, back then, it was one of the unique buildings. And so we did that as one of the HR activities, honestly, but it was also from a business angle. It made sense, you had people, everyone together, and it also helps to impress your clients, obviously. So, multiple reasons, but trigger was that.
Definitely having everybody under one roof.
Absolutely.
Definitely helps. So challenges are common for any business. While you had challenges growing in this region, you've been a big promoter of this region also, right? So tell me a little bit about what helped you grow being in this region. Like, you must have definitely had thoughts about, oh, let's just go and set up in Bangalore, or let's do it somewhere else, right? But what made you stay here, continue to build here, and what actually helped you grow here?
So honestly, when you're growing, all kinds of thoughts do cross your minds, and we did have a small presence in Mumbai and Bangalore much later. That was for a different reason, because there were specific skills we were trying to hire. So I was telling you about how we always thought ahead of our times. So we realized that just calling ourselves as a development company is not going to help. We need to do a differentiator. So that's how we decided that we had to have a design lab set up. So now design lab, when I say, there's UI, UX, the entire studio has to be set up. And Bombay was the best place to hire talent, so we decided to set up our offices there. And there is also a small story there. We didn't have an office for a very long time. So I used to fly to Bombay regularly and do all the interviews sitting in the Starbucks at the Terminal 1. There used to be a Starbucks there. And I don't know, I would have done some 25-30 interviews, bare minimum over there, sitting in Starbucks and doing all those interviews. Initial period we did work from home, even before all this COVID happened. And then we set up a small office in Bombay. But coming back to your original question as to why we felt we should be here. See, I think this region has its plus points, and we are strong believers of that. That no matter what we all say, I think we have our own culture, which is deeply ingrained in our region. And all of us have all reasons to go out. But let's find out one reason why we can't stay here and do something, right? And probably that is what we were able to achieve in 2021 with that huge exit that we got. So funding was also a big circus, I would say, because sitting in this region, it was very, very difficult to get a funding, round. So this was about 2012, 13, 14, time frame when we thought we should probably expand our business and look for funding. And, back then, I don't know, maybe 50, 100 investors easily we might have met, meetings I would say, to convince them to invest. But all of them would have this apprehension, sitting in Udupi, what are you going to achieve? They had their own concerns about scale that is possible to happen. But I think progressively we've been able to show that great talent is available here. And when I say this, it is not just about the campus hiring, but also outside talent, right? And there were a lot of people at a point in time who wanted to come back, because I think the bigger cities were getting a little cluttered, the quality of life was getting difficult. So a lot of people had reasons to come back also. And a bit of luck, I would say, but it all helped us at that point of time, where we found a lot of leadership team who were ready to come back to our region and settle down also and help us with that, growth back. But I think the strong reason I would say is quality of life, the quality of talent that we get here. I mean, it's so productive. Each time I go to Bombay, Bangalore, I feel so much, frustrated because I'm wasting my time there. In a day, probably 3 meetings happen with difficulty, whereas here you can do so much more. So I think that's one of, the strong reasons we said whatever it is, we will grow here, and I think to a decent extent we have been able to manage that.
Yes, Shylaja has been a big promoter of this region. She does a lot of activities, and which we'll talk about a little more, to make sure that this region comes on the global map, at least in the Indian map to begin with, so that we get enough attention. So thank you for that. With the number of people that you had, one of the I would say challenge, probably something that founders and the founding team try to manage and maintain is the culture, right? The culture that you begin with, and every company has their own cultures, and the culture that you begin with is something that you strive to keep when people with from different backgrounds, from different cities, with different experiences come and join your company. Talk a little bit about that. Over like 15, 20 years, how did that evolve? What are some of the things that you did to make sure it stays?
Right. So we've always been believers of process. We always believed that we need to have processes because then it becomes easier for you to scale. So that was very clear in our mind right from the beginning. And I think what helped is, Prashanth, we've always been able to freely experiment. Okay, that was a culture that was there, right? Like I told you, all of us were a bunch of freshers, and the company trusted us with whatever experiments that we were trying to do at different levels. And it just doesn't apply to me. So I had my set of peers who were, on the technical side. So they were, development, leads at a point in time, and then they grew to VP and EVP today. So all of us, I think, had been given a free hand, to try and experiment, because when you try 10 things, maybe 5 will work, 5 will fail. But that trust was always there, So I would say delegation. We always believed in delegation, and we ensured from our end also we would delegate, because then it gives you time to strategize and plan. So that was one thing. Second is always working closely with our customers. So that has been one of the main things that we always did right from, because we are in services. Yeah. So ultimately you have to listen to your customers, understand what they want, hear them out, and work accordingly. So I think that was one thing very clearly we did, and the model would have changed over a period of time. What I mean by that is, initially we would do all the customer interaction sitting here. Progressively, customers would expect your team to also be at your, at the customer's location. But the essence was always, this. So I think we've always tried to, ensure that whenever we have people being hired also, we were very careful that they align to these, thought process, because I think ultimately the process is also driven by people. And you need to have the right people to, kind of take over that responsibility. But yeah, that is something we always strived for and worked towards it. And to just give an example, we tried multiple things and experiments. Some would work, some would not work. As a services company, we also did a lot of product development. And when I say product development, I'm not talking about the 99 games or the global delight, even before that. So when I was, new into the company itself, back then, I don't know whether you remember using Netscape Navigator and all that.
Oh yes.
So we had built a search engine back then, okay, in 2000. So that was called Thalash. So, it was there right from there that we had to do product development. But probably that level of expertise that you need to do a product building, we lacked somewhere there. So I wouldn't say it was a failure, but we didn't succeed to the extent that we would want it to be. So we had a very close collaboration with Intel, and we did a lot of things, but it didn't scale to the extent. So we kept it aside and we moved on. So these are the kind of things we always would try and do, and learn over the period of time what works, what doesn't work, and then improvise on that in the next experiment.
So before we move on to the next part of your journey, you mentioned 99 games, you mentioned Global Delight, and you came from a services industry, and you mentioned that Kida that always existed. Like, tell me how did 99 games get formed, Global Delight? What ended up? How did you end up in both, or
right.
That story?
Okay, so like I said, early in the years itself, we realized that we wanted to do a product. But what didn't work back then, the reason was that we didn't realize that the DNA is totally different for a product company versus a services company. It's just not the same. No matter what you try to say or try to do, it just doesn't work that way. And that was one of the lessons we learned, very early. And so along the way, when we tried to set in our businesses, we always would try to bucket them into service lines. So we would pick up, say, banking, insurance as one segment. We would pick up e-commerce, consumer segment as another segment, and we would align people accordingly. And in this process, games and entertainment was one area that we had picked up, and we realized the amount of work that is there and the amount of challenging work that is involved there. It's very, very difficult. So you being in the technology would know OpenGL. Very, very difficult to crack. So we had some great programmers in-house. We were very, very passionate, and we had back then ported a lot of game titles, onto the Mac platform. So that is a huge market. So we used to work with big brands like Pop Games and different titles we had ported to the Mac platform. The Tomb Raider and the Lego Star Wars. Multiple of them. And that kind of triggered our interest. And we said, wow, this is a different world altogether. So why not build a different team altogether on this space? So initially we had picked up some 10 people to kind of experiment with it. Then once we knew that we had the capabilities to build on top of that, we carved them out as a separate division and then as a separate company itself. Because like I told you, the DNA was very different. So you could not just keep all of them together and say, now let's build the games. So 99 Games was hyped off. Global Delight, again, we realized that audio video was a very niche space, and we wanted to experiment there. So that team was also hyped off separately, and so that we could build the culture there separately and grow that business. So that's how it happened.
Very interesting, because I haven't spoken to anybody from the gaming industry. I know when I was back in the US, I had a couple of my friends who used to build games, and these people would be on Red Bull all the time, building. See, we have to release, because the releases in games happen overnight, fame and things like that. Yeah. So tell me what you do now. So you run this Ventana Ventures out of Udupi. Please tell me a little bit about that.
Right. So when we hyped off 99 Games and it became a different business, we did a lot of experiments over there. I wouldn't say we knew everything about gaming, because gaming is a different beast altogether. Why it is different is because there's a lot of money that gets burnt there. Okay, it's user acquisition is a very, very difficult task. Of course, for any product it is, but here it's a little more, because not everybody plays games. So the way you attract the gamers, and each game falls into different genres. So there are multiple types of games that are produced and released into the market. And say if you're a Candy Crush, as an example, if I have to take. Not necessarily you'll enjoy another genre. Okay, so there are hardcore gamers who like the Counter-Strike kind of games versus a very casual gamer. So the kind of thinking that they have is very, very different. So just because we had ported games back then didn't mean we knew everything in gaming. So it was a new learning for us altogether, and we learned along the way. So we had done puzzle games, we had done some adventure games, we did a chess game, we did multiple things, but some worked, some didn't work. So along the process, what we realized is the monetization thinking, the user acquisition thinking is different for different genres. And then we found that our success was in a simulation space. And that's the current title that we are working on, which is a Star Chef game. Just to digress a little bit before that, we also experimented with Bollywood in India, and we did the Dhoom game. I don't know whether anyone is a gamer here, but back then when Dhoom was launched as a movie, just before the movie was launched, they wanted to also release a game with it, as an experiment. So Yash Raj Films had contacted us because they knew we had a gaming studio. So they reached out and said, why don't you build a game for us? So we did that as an experiment. We wanted to explore and see how Bollywood things, how they work. So that was a great experience, I would say. We had to work in getting a lot of partners on board. So we collaborated with CEAT because it was a bike, right? So we showcased CEAT over there. So we did multiple things there. And it was a huge hit, I would say. Not in terms of revenue truly, but in terms of the outreach, the aspirational part of it, of people knowing about 99 Games. That was a great achievement for us. So we did all this, and that's when we realized that gaming as an industry was huge. So when this whole acquisition happened, so I told you that we got funding earlier, right? So these kind of experiments we would always do. I just also want to tell you why these, thinking becomes very important, Prashanth. When Apple had launched their mobile, phone, iPhone, back then we were largely working on a Mac platform. And we all knew that mobile was going to be a huge market, and Apple wanted to enter India in a huge way. And they tried to enter India. Nobody was ready to bet on it. So most of the guys didn't want to take that bet. And what happened is Apple contacted us and said, we're trying to push the media houses to come on the platform. Nobody is ready. Why don't you try to convince them? So we had a meeting with NDTV folks. So till that time when the iPhone was launched, largely our work was export. We were only working for customers outside India. Very, very little bit of work we were doing in India, but that kind of was a game changer for us. So we had a conversation with NDTV. NDTV said, "हमें mobile पे आना है, लेकिन we don't want to spend money. Now how do we do this?" So we said, okay, what we will do is we'll build the app for you, free of cost. You don't have to give us any money for it, but put our name on your app. So powered by Robosoft. So we kind of put our logo, and so we kind of were able to reach out to the hundreds of users who would use the app every day. They launch the app, they see our name. So that was a recall factor for us. And that kind of helped because at that point of time, after NDTV launched their app, and we did a revenue share. So we said, whatever monetization you do, you have to give us a part of that revenue. And that kind of helped open a lot of new avenues for us. So every news app that at that point of time was launched, we had done most of that work, whether it was Economic Times, Down South, your ETV app and whatnot, all of that. And that also helped us get into the OTT space. I'm just trying to connect the dot back into the games and entertainment space. So your Hotstar, your Sony Live, back then, 10, 12 years back, whatever journey started for all these companies, all of that we had done that work, including Paytm. Of course, Paytm is known for wrong reasons today, but back then, when they started their journey in India, we were their first development partners. They didn't have a team, so we started the work. We would still be doing work for them, but of course they have their in-house team. But this kind of partnership kind of helped us, grow our, businesses. So we realized that games and entertainment is going to be huge in India, for sure. That is where 99 Games was born. And progressively, we saw that in India, the consumption of, your content is increasing, right? The number of mobile users today has exponentially grown. They have this concept, right? India 1, 2 and 3. So India 1 is where you have all the HNIs and those folks who obviously are able to afford. What is interesting is the movement from India 3 to 2 and 2 to 1. Large part of our middle class families are moving from 2 to the India 1 category. The percentage is moving progressively if you look at the last 10 years data. So content increase, internet being cheaper, better phones being available, better devices being available means that people are ready to spend more, okay? And this automatically means that that industry is set for growth. So globally, gaming industry is probably 250 billion as a market, and India it's expected to be about 2 billion. So that's a huge market, and all these aspects that I mentioned are only helping us increase the content consumption. And this is the best time for us to kind of look at gaming as an industry as a future, because I think COVID taught us that no matter all other industries probably had challenges, but this industry didn't really have a challenge in that sense. That's why we thought we should get in in that space. So we were always building, so we were operators. We thought, why not getting into the investment side now? And in India, while I talk about how a lot of gaming companies are there, unfortunately the amount of funding that people get is not much. And that's because largely you don't have enough support at the early stage, at a pre-seed stage. So we thought we should enter at that point of time and support the founders and help them with the seed money and help them grow the business. And that is how Ventana was ideated and set up as a fund. So once the exit happened, I thought I had spent enough time in the company in Robosoft. So thought, let me venture out and figure out what next. And that is how this idea was born, and Ventana Ventures was formed.
Yeah, super interesting. I don't know if you can talk about any investments that you have done, but it would be interesting to know what kind of gaming companies are we seeing. Like, you have been doing this for a long time, but I'm pretty sure there are new companies, small startups out of colleges and all that coming up. What kind of gaming companies are you seeing now, and what interests Ventana Ventures specifically?
Right. So we don't bet on ideas precisely. It should be a prototype. That is what we would want to invest on any company. But like I said, at a pre-seed and a seed stage. So typically they would have like a prototype ready, and we will evaluate them, and then we would invest. So like I mentioned, Prashanth, in gaming there's a lot of classification that happens, different kinds of genres as we call it. But we have chosen to largely focus on the casual, hyper casual, and also we look at premium titles. So we are not tied up with any specific genre. We want to experiment with multiple genres because we want to see what works well for us as a fund. But what is interestingly coming out of late is a premium title. Now what I mean by a premium title is I pay once and I buy it forever. So I pay like $20, $25. So that kind of genre, interesting. We were also surprised to see this getting popular in India. We never expected that this would be the trend that we see. So there's a huge gaming conference that happens on a yearly basis in Hyderabad, typically October and November timeframe. So we just finished that last November. And what surprised us was to see the amount of premium titles that were getting produced and good quality. I think that is also an interesting factor for us, that over a period of time people have realized that in gaming, gaming is a very interesting intersection of art, science, technology. Three different things happen, and along with that, on top of this, the metrics measurement comes in, which is very, very crucial. So the measurement of how your users behave, what do they like, are they just getting off your platform or off your game, are they still playing your game after 30 days, after 60 days? Yeah. All this measurement is very, very critical, and a lot of gaming founders don't realize this. So this is where we come in and help them. And so multiple kinds of evaluations we do. So we would have probably spoken to about 400 companies till date. So we just started our journey 1.5 years back in terms of focused approach of talking to founders, and we would have spoken to about 400 people, different companies, and out of that we have chosen to do our investments in about 5 to 6 companies, and different kinds of investments that we have done across the country, and we want to support Indian founders. A lot of them, they ask whether you will invest into a foreign company. Nothing stops us, but I think India has so much potential. We being in India, we want to support Indian founders. So that will be our first way of looking at it. And kind of investments we have done, you had a question. So like I said, there's one company which is building a dinosaur game. Very, very interesting, and they're based in Cochin. And so the guy, the founder, he's done a PhD in dinosaur study. He studied somewhere in China, and he got so interested. Then he got along and built an idea, and then we met and we said, okay, let's invest. So that's one company based out of Cochin, and part of the team is in Trivandrum. So that's one team. There's another team which is in Bangalore, which is building a very interesting, they're called as MetaShot. The company's name is MetaShot, and they have built a sensor-based bat where I sit in my drawing room and I can play with my friends anywhere across the globe. They have built a game, so I can play, the cricket game. So that's an interesting, company. Another company is about sports again. They have built a streaming platform. Very, very interesting. And what they are doing is, it's not streaming your IPL kind of, matches. They are focused on grassroots. So there's a kabaddi match happening here locally. They would stream that, as an example. So very interesting kind of work that is happening. So there's another company which is building a Souls-like game. So what that means is, it's a dark genre, very sad, very horror-based kind of title, but there's a big audience for that also. So very weird kind of gamers that exist in the world, but yeah, it has its own fan following, and so we decided to support them also. So different kind of games that we try and support.
Yeah, it's very good. And have you seen anything come out of this region, specifically Mangaluru or Udupi region?
We are on the lookout. We didn't find anything yet, but we have definitely found something in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, definitely across India. For the moment, we didn't find anything in here locally.
And typically these gaming companies, the kind of background they come from is like how do they end up being in the gaming industry? Like, how do you become a gaming programmer? And I know you guys are doing a bunch of stuff with the colleges, where you're teaching them how to write, how to build games and all that. But what kind of background do these people have right now?
Yeah, so typically for a gaming company to be successful, honestly, it is threefold. One is a technology background. So you need to have proper technology-based, team. When I say technology, it's the game engine largely. It could be Unity, Unreal. Typically, these are the ones that are largely used. So you need to have good programmers, on that front. That's given for any company, but that's one of the requirements. Then there is this art, because there's always a lot of characters and design elements which come in, right? So you need a very, very strong team, and depending on whether you're doing a 2D game or a 3D game, 3D artist is a different skill altogether. And what we don't realize is that when we talk typically in a product language, designers are one kind of designers, that's it. Here there is multi-layer, there's one guy who will sketch, his skill set is different. The 3D guy is a different skill. So the tools are so advanced and polished. So it's a different skill altogether. So we strongly look for such a combination of people. And the third element is, like I said, metrics measurement. That's a very, very crucial part of it, because you might build a great game, but if it doesn't sell in the market and you don't measure the results, because your UA strategy is based on these metrics alone. So you need to figure out what lever you need to move to decide where you will spend more money, which channel will give you more results. So you need to keep a watch out on all that aspect. So we have a separate dedicated team who just does this only. there's something called live ops where we keep running, campaigns in the game.
Right.
And keep watching the results and then tune it appropriately. That's a different skill altogether. So all these are typically, skill sets that is required for a game to be successful. And you mentioned about the workshop. We're trying to tell people that gaming is not just development. There are multiple folds to it. So it depends on what your passion is. If you have an interest in this, then maybe you should pursue.
Right.
Many times people don't even know.
So do you think in the next 5 to 7 years we'll probably see a unicorn from the gaming industry as well? Is that something that is on the horizon?
So in India, if you see, while gaming studios have come across in India, there has not been a great success story, honestly, from India, except for the Nazara story that we have, or in the recent times you would have heard about say Moonfrog, and there are a couple of them. So typically in gaming, again it's a very different industry. The exit typically happens through an acquisition. That's the typical mode that happens. So of course, if we see a different exit that happens, great. But yeah, we are fingers crossed. Let's see. We might find a unicorn. You never know. A lot of interesting work that's happening, and a lot of changes also have happened in India by way of different kinds of policies that different governments are announcing also. So Karnataka government always had an AVGC policy, very interesting work that's happening.
Yeah.
Recently Kerala government announced, Tamil Nadu announced their AVGC policy. So suddenly there is a lot of, Telangana always had, so suddenly there's a lot of interest that is happening in India, and I'm sure all this will only help us to discover the unicorn in India.
Yeah.
So let's see how that happens. And also, just to add, a lot of funds are also focused on India today. So Sony as a company have launched their fund in India. Then there are other funds which are also focused just on gaming. Even the funds which don't typically invest in gaming are showing suddenly an interest in gaming. Otherwise, in India, you just have 1 or 2 funds, including us, who are purely doing only gaming. There are no funds which do only gaming. They do all domains, including gaming. But we are the ones who do only gaming. So hopefully the scene will change. Let's see.
I mean, you have always been 2 steps ahead of where the market is trending. So wish you all the luck on that.
Thank you.
I think we can open up for any questions if people have any. We spoke about Robosoft, we spoke about Ventana Ventures, which Shylaja is running now. Any questions?
So, coming to gaming, what platforms in India, basically which platform is more trending in gaming industry?
When you say platforms,
When I say platforms, I say either PC gaming or console gaming or mobile gaming, which kind of?
So it's a fragmented market in that sense. But in India, what is also interestingly happening is esports is catching up a lot. If you go back, you had a question earlier about what we see young student crowd or the younger generation focusing on. Their interest lies on esports, which is also very interesting space. As a fund, we have not yet evaluated that very closely. So esports, if you understand gaming, it is a different space altogether. That is something that is really catching up in India. But each of these gamers have their own set of liking. So casual gamers are also there, but I think the largest trend will always be on the console side. Nobody will beat that because they are the hardcore gamers, so to say. So that will always be the top notch, which is what I told you that we were also surprised that a lot of premium titles are getting developed from India, and that I think is just signaling the same thing. So that's what we are observing, and a lot of promotions are also happening from the likes of Microsoft, Sony to promote their platforms also into supporting the Indian founders. So I guess that trend is what is going to be seen largely.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of gamers here.
Is it? Oh, nice.
We hold the Counter-Strike tournament once a year.
Oh, nice. So we should come here
Oh,
then.
yeah.
Nice.
Any more questions?
So then you know the answer yourself. Are you a gamer?
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of games do you play?
Or basically console game.
Okay.
Including horror. Any more questions? Okay. Thank you, Shylaja, for coming here today. I think it was like we get so bogged down with talking about our industry and what we do all the time. It's always a good change to hear some stories, some different domains that are trending, how this region is growing. So thank you for firstly coming here. Thank you for supporting this region grow, and we want to hear a lot more success stories from here, which you are also working towards. So thank you for everything.
Thanks, Prashanth. And just wanted to add, Prashanth is equally working towards this cause. I think it's ultimately as a team we are all trying our best. So those of you would already heard about it. Maybe Thai chapter we had launched in this region. Prashanth is an active member there. So we're doing multiple things as an initiatives. I'm sure as UniCourt team you are doing a lot of tech events, which is something that we've always felt was missing in the region, right? You keep hearing all these events that happen in bigger cities, but our region never had that happening. We were always working in silos, so sad thing, but I think we all have now got together, to do something together and change the scene. And very interesting facts discovered that there are about 200 companies, and startups in this ecosystem, and a lot more 1,000 people count coming, in our region, which is all great stories, and I think we should try and celebrate each of them as a success and help our region, grow. And thanks so much for all your support, Prashanth.
Absolutely, and it's always a pleasure working with you. I mean, even a lot of folks here from UniCourt also work towards those tech events that are there.
Nice.
Like a lot of effort goes from there and to also make this happen. So I think we are all in this together.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.